next thing on the list for the rigging was to take off the cutter stay. That was probably the most tricky part in the whole thing, because it has this gooseneck that sits on the stay to hold the boom up. But Chris had sent me a couple of little things to play with to figure out how we could make it sit there. We played around a little bit with it, but in the end we found a way to keep it up there. And once everything was back together, it was time to cut it to the right size and to put the high mud fitting on. And for cutting the wire, you have to jam the cable cutter quite a bit on the floor. That was quite a fun part about the changing the rig. But then I went up on the mast and I tried to put the T-toggle into the slot, and that wasn't that easy. It took quite some while to jiggle it in there, but finally I managed. And then when I came back down, there was a little bit of a bad surprise because for some reason, I don't know, I must have made a little mistake in measuring the old stay, because I had cut the new stay, I don't know, maybe like 5 centimeters too short. So in me, panic was rising, but Tom was just like, well, don't worry, that's no problem, we'll find a way. Because he's so used to solving problems in the rigging world. For me, it was like I thought everything was messed up, but it was no problem. We just added another toggle at the bottom and then everything was fixed. The initial reason why I had actually started to give Karl a new paint job was because I had to renew the non-skid area on the deck. So I had to tape off all the areas where the non-skid was going to be, which took quite a lot of time because I wanted to have it really nice and precise. I chose a light gray for the non-skid area, and it did take some time to find the right mixture of paint and palettes. The non-skid project had been a project that I've been postponing since quite a while, because I'd actually gotten those non-skid palettes shortly after I bought the boat. And now I know that I could have also just used plain sand, but at that time I had asked someone and they told me that these were the palettes that I should be getting. But man, did Karl look spiffy at the end. Next thing up on the list for the rigging change was to take down the furler Genoa. Process, I had to take apart the whole furler box at the bottom and to clean out all the bearings, to clean the bearing bolts, and then once they're all nice and shiny again, then re-grease the whole thing and put it all back together. It was a little bit tricky to figure out the right final length for it, and also because I'd messed up the cutter stay already, I was a bit worried, so I actually measured everything 3 times, because the new toggles, they were a different size than the old toggles, and so we really had to make sure that all the little differences in millimeters were adding up to the new length in total, which was a bit tricky, but in the end it did work out well. once everything was put back together, I had to put the stay lock fitting on the bottom of the furler and roll up the furler line, and it was all done. Once the furler was up again, it was time to loosen the backstays and take the old backstays out and put the new backstays back together and just mount them at the top, which was fairly simple in comparison to the cutter stay and the Genoa. Just out here changing the upper shrouds, and of course the SD card is full, so I have a new SD card delivery from Tom. Really dropped that camera. It was kind of hard to be out there at the spreaders without actually having the upper shrouds to hold yourself out there, and it was quite tricky to put those little fittings that hold the shrouds in place. I mean, you have to lift up the shrouds and put some pressure on it, and then put them all back together again and make sure that you don't lose any of your tools into the sea. And then at the end, you have to make sure that the angle above the spreader is actually the same angle that you have below the spreader. And that is the right position that the spreader should be in the end. And then once everything was up, I had to go around and make sure that everything had the right tension on each shroud and on each stay, and see that the mast is actually straight. Well, Karl has a complete new rig, and thanks again for CC Rigging for the great parts. And big thanks also to Tom for helping me with this great project. And I have to say, it was a lot of fun. And I've learned a lot again, which was great. And now all that is missing is to take out for a trial run and see how everything is holding up. But more about that next week.